Okay, folks, Monday evening review. Today we are reviewing what they call the buddy cop genre. Clint Eastwood directed, and this is kind of tying back into the Coogan's Bluff movie where I had mentioned that particular film that Eastwood starred in kind of defined that particular genre of heavy-hitting action heroes, as it were. The Rookie. Low battery mode. I'm never prepared. Starring Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen. Right off the bat, I have a hard time accepting Charlie Sheen. I just think he's, I don't know. Loved him in Platoon, but his personal life, I don't know. It just leaves a bad taste in my mouth. But if you look past the people and their morality and their personal life, let's just talk about this particular film. 121-minute runtime, like I mentioned, starring Clint Eastwood and Charlie Sheen, also directed by Clint Eastwood. Filmed in Panavision, the best buddy cop movie of the year, said Pat Collins of WWOR-TV. This movie is rated R, and when you talk about the R rating from yesterday when I reviewed The Wild Bunch, 1990 R-rated is completely different than 1969 R-rated, albeit they're only about 21 years, 31 years. Was that right? I can't do math. Anyway, in a short amount of time, the violence and gratuitous language and sex, it's off the charts of this film, people. This movie was completely buried at the box office. It came out in theaters December 7th, 1990, and it cost about $39 million to make and did not make its returns back at the box office. 21.6 million, and from what I read on Wikipedia, this was because Chris Columbus's Home Alone had debuted a month earlier on November 10th. That movie was filmed on a budget of $18 million, destroying, and it's like the 10th highest grossing film of all time, destroying every other movie that was coming out at the time. The Home Alone movie was still overshadowing this Christmas time release. Home Alone, on a flip side of things, brought in $476 million at the box office compared to this piddly little $21 million box office. And part of it, I think it's just very, like I read on Wikipedia, they use the phrase formulaic. And I think that we were just fatigued, and there's so many iconic buddy cop movies from the era and just police movies from the era. So you think of the Lethal Weapon franchise. Part 2 had come out the year before this, I believe, 1988 or 89. Part 1, I think, came out in 87. So, you know, you have those buddy cop movies in your mind. Danny Glover, Mel Gibson, just iconic movies of the time. And this is like right into that generation of movies. And to me, it just doesn't measure up to like that type of a buddy cop movie, or even like, let's say, 48 Hours, which I have yet to review, but I know that movie's a really iconic, highly rated film of the 80s. It's just, it was okay. It was over the top with violence. The violence was much more realistic. There's a very graphic male rape scene where Clint Eastwood, who plays a hardened LAPD auto burglary detective Powalski, he's held captive and raped by a femme fatale, and apparently that was very controversial in the day, so that kind of was like a black mark for this movie. But you know, everything that I have read up until this point in other movies, especially when I was reading Coogan's Bluff and researching that Don Siegel picture starring Eastwood, he kind of wanted to push the envelope and have like really shocking things happen in his movies. And that kind of like started with that 1968 Coogan's Bluff movie where there was like shocking scenes in the way he treated women and the way he would sleep with women to coerce information, and they wanted to maybe cut some of the scenes, and then Eastwood said, no, leave it in. So he was kind of pushing the envelope, and people maybe thought he pushed it too far in this particular film without giving any spoilers. I mean, obviously that's just one scene in the whole movie. But it was just kind of like, okay, gross and disgusting and
gratuitous and unnecessary.
I was just telling the viewing audience that there's this one particular... You didn't watch this movie. You would have never watched this movie. There's this one scene in this movie where Clint Eastwood's character is held captive and they have him tied to a chair, and one of his captives is a very attractive female, and she, like, cuts him with a razor and then rapes him while he's trapped to the chair. It doesn't show anything. It's not...
female rapes him?
Yeah, basically she's, like, lording power over him, and it was, like, a real turnoff to all the critics. They didn't like that.
Yeah.
And then, like, it's going back to that formula that they created in Coogan's Bluff, where he's just kind of like the Dirty Harry character, just...
I don't think I missed out on anything.
You didn't miss out?
I'm happy I didn't watch it.
I think that, like, what you're seeing, like, all the Dirty Harry movies where all the cops, or maybe even Stallone Cobra, where the cops just, like, laying waste to everybody, destruction, chaos, as long as they get the bad guy. And basically, the antithesis at the beginning of the film of the Eastwood character, they bring in the Charlie Sheen character to kind of even him out. But then by the end of the movie, you're like, there's a method to my madness, and this guy's becoming this guy, and it's not necessarily... Is it redemptive? I don't know. Should you be an ultra-violent police officer to get shit done? I use profanity in my review. This is a big deal. No, so, I don't know. It was entertaining, but it was like everything was so over the top. There's explosions, planes are exploding, buildings are exploding, luxury automobiles are being destroyed and laid waste left and right. I don't know. I was just like, right off the bat, it just kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and maybe I'm getting sensitive in my older age, in my late 30s, but I am going to go 2.5 out of 5 on this particular movie. It was entertaining at parts, but overall, it was just pretty much a lot of other movies, but like pushing the envelope with the violence, the rape scene, the casting of something that was like throwing me off is they cast 2 of the main villains. They were supposed to be German, but in a very controversial move, Eastwood cast Brazilian actors and actresses, and so that was kind of like, everyone was like, what? And obviously I'm looking at these characters and they're having German accents, but they clearly look not German, and it was odd. I don't know. So Rotten Tomatoes, also kind of an agreement. 29%, IMDb 5.9 out of 10, and Google users are probably in the high 2s to low 3s is my guess, at the 67% range, if that's something that you could say. Now, that being said, I love Clint Eastwood as a director. I would have to say that Mystic River, his Best Picture nominee film, I want to say that came out in the early 2000s. That is a masterpiece. There are positives about this film, like all the action sequences, albeit over the top, they're very well done. The cinematographer, Jack in Green, he was awesome. I really like how Eastwood does these very precise. He wants to just do everything the first time. He doesn't want to do multiple takes. And it's just very real. The lighting in the film was very eye-catching to me. There's like these dark bar scenes where there's lots of red light, and then there's like late night scenes where it's just the lights of the automobiles, and there's car chases and chaos, and everything's not very well lit, but it's just kind of adding a lot of atmosphere. So I did like that, but overall, like I mentioned earlier, and where I came to my 2.5 out of 5 review, it's been done, and it's just like so over the top, and the Eastwood character is just like, he's too much. But I like it, but then like it's also kind of repulsing. And then Charlie Sheen character, I just can't get the feeling of him out of my head, and how I already felt when I even picked up the box and I saw Sheen. I don't know. That's my review, folks. I've got nothing more to add. I'm blathering on. I apologize that I said some profanity, but we're reviewing an R-rated film, so maybe you shouldn't be watching this review if your children are present. Until next time, we'll see you then.